What's going on, guys? This past weekend was the NAWCQ, and at that event, there was supposedly a hat format Attack of the Giant card event, and while I say supposedly, it's because Konami kind of messed up with a handful of things. If you didn't hear, they changed it from April 2014 format to July 2014 format. If you want more details into some of the other things that they actually changed for that event, I did make a video talking about that, and I will have it linked in the description. I definitely suggest going and checking that video out if you're curious about what changes were actually made, as they do actually impact these results. So this isn't going to be quite hat format, it's slightly after hat format, which does kind of change the topping decks and stuff, but I actually was at this event, and I have the top 16 breakdown, the top 8 breakdown, the top 4, and just a handful of information about the decks that, made it to those rounds, as well as what won. And probably later on, I don't know if I'm going to post it before this video or after, but I do have the first and second place deck profiles as well. There was a slight problem with my audio, unfortunately, so it might not come out the greatest on those videos, but either way, I want to post those so you guys have it. And overall, it seems like there's been a lot of confusion on the number of players and just what decks actually ended up topping that event, and I was there literally just writing down everyone's deck, like what they were on and everything while the rounds were going on, so I have the accurate information for that. And as always, just going to talk about the event and everything related to it, so let's get straight into it. So in terms of the number of players, some people were saying it hit almost 200, while other people were saying that it only got in the 60s. But what I can say is when I talked to the judge around that time, they said there had been about 108 players, but it doesn't quite line up with once they put up the round 2 standings. I should have taken a picture of it, but by round 2, it showed about 30 to 32 different pairings, which would mean if you were to double that, because this was single elimination, you would have about 64 players, and that was by round 2, meaning you would double that again, and you would get about 128 players. Now, with that being said, there were, by round 1, a lot of people that dropped because of the changes that Konami actually made for this event, changing the format, changing the master rule, and everything like that. As of round 1, there had been, I believe they said 20 to 30 people that had buys and or just their opponent never showed up. So with that being said, it might mean that there was about 128 players that entered and maybe 20 or so didn't show up. And that's why we only have kind of a range for that. So in theory, it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, but I'm guaranteeing by round 2, there were about 30 to 32 pairings on the sheet, and as a result, again, you just would take that because there's 2 players per thing, double it, and then because it was, the second round, it means that half were already eliminated, so, just multiplying it kind of gets you the number. And again, it was single elimination, and there was no top cut or anything like that. The Ultimate Time Wizard for Edison obviously had some Swiss rounds and then cut to top cut and single elimination, but for the Attack of the Giant card, it was not like that. In terms of all the people and what they played, I don't have, the decks written down for every single player for the whole event as a whole, but what I can say is there was a good mix of really just everything. Even with the hits to Geargia and stuff that were in this event and Bujin, there was still a few floating around. I know for the pods that were taking place beforehand that were actual hat format pods at the event, there was a lot of Bujin actually. I saw 3 different 8-man pods actually go to Bujin mirror matches in the finals, as well as there was a handful of other things. I saw like a plant Quasar deck, I saw some frog decks that were a little on the obscure side obviously, but then you had, your normal H.A.T, Mermail. There was, like I said, Bujin, Infernity, there was some Mythic ruler, I saw a little bit of Hieratic ruler, very little Spellbook, but there was some around, so you kind of did have your good mix regardless of, how they changed everything. But let's actually go and look at what the top 16 was for this event. So looking at the top 16, there were 3 different Mermail decks, which was the most represented in the top 16, followed by 2 Bujin. So even with the hits, there were 2 Bujins that were able to make it to the top 16 of this, and I think that also comes down to how I mentioned there was a lot of people on Bujins. That definitely kind of explains it. I know for sure one of the builds was on Kaiser Coliseum because it was someone who, watches the channel, and I was talking to them, very nice person, and I saw multiple times in their game ones that they did have Kaiser on board, so that was a little bit unique. In terms of Evil Swarm, one of the players was Raminator, who I have shown off in a bunch of hat format replay reviews on the channel and enters in a lot of the online hat format tournaments. So that was pretty cool, and I think it was a more standard build as far as I know. I could be wrong on that. And then I know the other player who was on Evil Swarm had a lot of tech cards in their deck. I remember walking past their game when I was actually writing this down, and they were like maining Thunder King. I believe they were maining it, at least. I saw it on their board. I don't know if maybe it happened to just be a game 2 when they had it in, but regardless, I saw that as well as Evil Swarm Azathoth on their board. So, sometimes people do side that, but it is possible that they were actually maining that as well. So that was kind of there. There were 2 hat decks, 1 Mythic Ruler, 1 Card Car hat, so the Card Car Hand Artifact Traptrix deck, and I'm trying to remember if it was this one. I believe it was this build was on Artifact Caduceus, the one that lets you draw a card every single time you summon a artifact monster, or it might even be anytime an artifact monster is summoned. So there was one of those. I really broke down the artifact decks, you'll see here in a second. There was one Fire Fist Hand Artifact Traptrix deck as well, so playing the Fire Fist engine. This was like kind of a little different because there was one fat build, so they just weren't on the hands. There was 1 cat. Obviously, this was the person who ended up getting second place. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Wiz Kalina, another person who is very good in the online hat format tournaments. And obviously, it shows over to the in-person events. It should, not be a surprise there. There was 1 Chainburn. This caught a lot of people off guard. Just watching their matches, this person was definitely the person to watch at the event. Everyone was kind of freaking out when they saw it in the top 16 because no one's really prepared for that deck. So I thought that was interesting. There was the 1 fat again, and then there was the Lightsworn ruler. I believe the Fire Fist Hand Artifact Traptrix player was someone who actually is a local to me, and same with the Lightsworn Ruler player, which was really cool to see this, because it was surprising how few people were actually maining the Crows. So that was kind of cool, and also they're just a great player. But this was the top 16. Moving on to the top 8, there were still 2 Evil Swarm. There was the 1 Card Car Hat Artifact Traptrix, 1 Mermail, 1 cat, 1 Chainburn, and 1 hat. I think I said Lightsworn Ruler already. If not, there was the Lightsworn Ruler as well. And again, we see that Chainburn player was still in there. We see a couple different Artifact Traptrix variants, 3 different ones, and the 2 Evil Swarm players just, if you look at the matchups that are here, Evil Swarm and Ophion just play so well into artifacts a lot of the time, and even into the Lightsworn Rulers. If I recall correctly, it was one of the matchups was Evil Swarm versus Lightsworn Ruler. It was Mermail versus, I forget what deck they played in the top 8. I might be getting the rounds confused, but regardless, this is the top 8. And yeah, so let's move on to the top 4. The top 4 was 1 Mermail, 1 hat, 1 Evil Swarm, and 1 cat. And for this one, it was, let me try to remember, it was cat versus Mermail, and then it was hat versus Evil Swarm. And the result of that was hat won their matchup and cat won theirs. So it was hat versus cat in the final. And at the end of the whole event, hat was able to take the event. So, it was kind of expected with how they changed the rules. Hat had the best advantage in a way, though the cat list was also very good because of Card Car being able to draw an extra card kind of allows you, even though you weren't able to draw for this event, you kind of still did have some advantage there. I feel overall the, decks that actually made it pretty far in this were pretty much what you'd expect outside of maybe like Chainburn and in some cases even Lightsworn Ruler. There was no Sylvan that was like, there wasn't even that many Sylvan players in the event from what I saw. And same with like Infernity was definitely around, but people just like knew how to play against it, especially looking at some of these players who are constantly playing online. There wasn't that many that like just kind of picked up a deck and went to the event really. It was people that kind of knew what they were doing, and I wouldn't say the Infernity players were bad or anything. It's just people were prepared for it, and I think in-person events do kind of change that. I talked about that in a video leading up to this event, that a lot of people would probably go back to historical lists and look at that versus what the, ever-changing current hat format actually is. So that was something to keep in mind. And again, with the rule changes, it's expected that we didn't see Geargia because the July ban list put Geargia gear to 1. So that also was kind of something that you would pretty much expect from it. But overall, really cool event. And again, I don't have the exact number on the number of players, but I do have that pretty solid range for it. If anyone else has any other information on it, feel free to comment that in the comment section. I know a lot of people were looking for it. And again, I will have those first and second place deck lists either probably before this video comes out or maybe right after or something along those lines. And again, there was a little bit of audio issue, but I do apologize for that. And I still want to put it out for you guys and for those players. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it, comment any questions or videos you want to see in the future, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out, share this video with your friends, and anyways guys, I will see you in the next video.